Okay. Now we are going to continue our lecture with uterus. We talked about the uterus structure in our yesterday lecture. You know our uterus have a three layer. From inner to the outer we have endometrium, in the middle side we have myometrium, and outer side we have the perimetrium. The thickest layer of uterus composed of the myometrium, smooth muscle cells present in this part, and in the innermost side we have the endometrium. Endometrium covered with simple columnar epithelial cells. That cells invaginate into the connective tissue under the epithelium and form the uterine glands, and between the glands and under the epithelium we have connective tissue or stroma of uterus. Here you can see a section from the wall of uterus. This part is our endometrium, and you can see loosely arranged stromal cells between the endometrial glands, and also here we have the higher amount of the vessels, arteries and veins. And here you can see our muscular leg. Again, in higher magnification, here we have the blood vessels, generally arteries, and you can see the glands and stroma between them. This part is our venous parts. Here you can see structure of a straight gland invaginate into the stroma. This part is our epithelium, and here is the stromal cells. We talked about this hormonal regulation in our yesterday lecture. As you remember, I drew these parts for you in the board, on the board. And look at this part, the gonadotropin levels, LH and FSH, during follicular phase. As you can see, the levels of FSH goes to decrease, but the levels of LH suddenly increase before the ovulation. With this increase, the oocytes goes to ovulate from the follicles, and after that, the levels of estrogen and FSH goes to lower sides, and we have the luteal phase. During the secretory phase, the proliferative phase, you can see the increasing of the production of estrogen by granulosa cells. This increase could be reached the peak just before the ovulation and before the increasing of LH, and this increase lead to increase of the LH hormone. After that, the estrogen levels goes to decrease, but the progesterone levels goes to increase under the effect of the LH and production from the granulosa lutein and theca lutein cells. Again, you can see the effects of estrogen and progesterone to the uterus wall. This is our uterus wall, endometrium. Here you can see the menstrual bleeding stage, and with this menstrual bleeding, you can see the wall of ovary, of the uterus, goes to the thinnest stage. And after that, under the surge of estrogen, the wall of the uterus goes to increase the size. And this stage is our proliferative phase. After that, under the high amount of progesterone, the endometrium goes to the increase the size again, and also the glands of endometrium start to secrete the secretory vesicles and secretory elements into the luminal side of the uterus. These relations is very important. In myometrium, we have different layers of the muscles, smooth muscle bundles in the middle side, And here you can see endometrium. Okay, this slide is very important for our lecture. The endometrium divided into parts, the functional layer, about 60 or 70% of the thicknesses of uterus in the secretory stage composed of functional layer. And the rest part is basal layer, which not detached from uterus wall during menstrual bleeding. The blood vessels, the large blood vessels or arcuate arteries present between the myometrium muscle layer. After that, these vessels form a radial branch, and this radial branch uh, give rise to the straight artery, which enter into the basal layer and also form spiral artery, which enter into the functional layer, and in the most outer side you can see the capillary network and lacunas of the blood vessels. During the menstrual bleeding, this part detached from the surface of uterus. And as you can see, spiral arteries stop circulating to this part, and because of the low amount of blood here, this side goes to apoptosis and detaches. But in this period, as you can see, the basal layer not lose the nutrition or circulation, because the basal layer blood vessels come from the straight artery and not related with the spiral arteries. We talked about this part, these phases. You can read these parts. Okay, now I'm going to show you some examples from the endometrium related with the different stages of uterus cycle or menstrual cycle. Here you can see the wall of the uterus just before the menstrual cycles start, and you can see the thicknesses goes to decrease, and here we have the glands, and in this part we have the myometrium layer. This part is yes. This part is the proliferative phase, and you can see straight glands in proliferative phase. But in secretory phase, you can see the convoluted gland. Here you can see this convolution. This phase related with the secretory phase. In secretory phase, the epithelium completely form, and you can see this convoluted glands. In menstrual phase, you can see this glands goes to disrupted, epithelium goes to apoptosis, and before, here you can see the stage just before the bleeding. And in this stage, you can see highly convoluted glands. In the stage of glands proliferation. After this stage, this part goes to detach from the surface. Let me compare with this part. Look at here, we have the convoluted glands in secretory phase, and this phase is proliferative phase. In the proliferative phase, we have straight glands. Here you can see the straight glands, and also in some areas we don't have epithelium in the surface. Why? Because this phase is the proliferative stage. In this stage, the endometrium goes to form its own normal surface structures. Before this stage, we have the bleeding and all of the structures detached from the surface. Now, the endometrium goes to regenerate itself, and during this phase, as you can see, the glands again form, and in the upper side, epithelium, for example, in this part, goes to form from bigger. And look at the type of the gland, only you can see straight glands. Compared with these glands, can you understand the differences? Look at the structure of glands and look at the epithelium. Epithelium completely formed, but here in this part we don't have epithelium. Here we have epithelium, here we have epithelium, but here again we don't have epithelium. And in menstrual phase, before the menstrual phase, we can see the end stage of the gland formation. Okay, this slide is very important for events occurring in the menstrual cycles. Now we are going to talk about the cervix. You know the anatomy of cervix. We have the endocervix and exocervix. Endocervix continue with the uterus and cover with the simple columnar epithelium, but exocervix continue with the wall of the vagina and cover with stratified squamous epithelium. You can see these epithelium changes in the junctional part. Look at here. Here we have the stratified squamous epithelium, but here we have simple columnar epithelium. This part is our junctional zone or transformation zone. It's very important. Some of the cancers can originate from this transformation zone. Here you can see the transformation zone and our simple columnar epithelium changed into the stratified squamous epithelium. Under the epithelium, we have connective tissue, but this connective tissue is a type of irregular dense connective tissue, not loose connective tissue. Here you can see this transformation zone again. In this part we have simple columnar epithelium, but here we have stratified squamous epithelium. This part is our endocervix, this part is our exocervix. In the endocervix and exocervix we have glands related with the cervix, and here you can see the cervix pap smear, and with this pap smear you can see the abnormal cells and the amount of abnormal cells, and you can understand abnormalities in the cervix. For example, here again you can see the neutrophils in the wall of the cervix, exocervix, because of the inflammation, and also you can see leukocyte in this part. We have cervical mucus secreted from the cervix glands. Okay, the other structure is vagina. Vagina again composed of three layers: the mucosa, muscular layer, and adventitia. The mucosa of vagina composed of stratified squamous epithelium, and under the epithelium again we have the irregular dense connective tissue, not loose connective tissue. It's very important. Irregular dense connective tissue. Under the mucosa we have muscular layer. In muscular layer we have smooth muscle cells in different orientation, and also we have adventitia. As you know, adventitia generally composed of composed of loose connective tissue, and you can see high amount of adipose tissue in the adventitia. But in the adventitia of vagina, we have dense connective tissue, irregular dense connective tissue, and these structures help to vagina to protect its form and its dense form. And also here we have the vaginal gland or vaginal vestibular gland. continue with the epithelium. Look at here. This part is our mucosa from here to here. This part is epithelium, irregular dense connective tissue. Here you can see the thin lamina propria, and in this part we have the muscular tip. Look at here. This is our epithelium, start from the squamous epithelium, and here is our lamina propria. What is the type of lamina propria here? Dense irregular connective tissue, not loose connective tissue. It's very important. And when you look at the cytoplasma of epithelial cells, you can see clear cytoplasm. This is because of the glycogen deposition in the cytoplasma portion, and during our preparation, these structures lose and the cell's cytoplasma appear as the empty area. And also we have external genitalia. You know the anatomy of these genital organs. We don't want to describe this part histology to you because we have only the skin, sensory nerves, and connective tissue in different structures. Now, I'm going to talk about the mammary gland. Mammary gland, as you know, these glands start to form before the birth, and before the birth, we have only this part of the mammary glands in both males and females, and composed of the nipple and darker area filled with melanin pigments, and also the lactiferous sinuses. After birth, during maturation, under the estrogen production in the females, and also progesterone and prolactin, the glands start to grow in the females. And firstly, they form, here is our lactiferous sinuses. The lactiferous sinuses cover with stratified squamous epithelium, or stratified cuboidal epithelium, stratified cuboidal epithelium, the epithelium of lactiferous sinuses. And here is the nipple. After puberty, this part goes to increase the size and filled with the adipose tissue and connective tissue. And between the adipose and connective tissue, you can see the growing of the ducts to the outer side. These ducts, known as the lactiferous ducts, and also form the terminal ducts. The lactiferous ducts and terminal ducts cover with simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple cuboidal epithelium. And all of the lactiferous sinuses form all lactiferous ducts and terminal ducts, and cover with dense connective tissue. These structures can form lobes, different lobes in the inner side of the gland. The dense connective tissue, and in the inner side of dense connective tissue we have it. In early pregnancy stage, under the effect of generally prolactin hormone and lactiferous hormones, the terminal gland start to develop and form the lobules. Here you can see the development of these lobes, and in mid-pregnancy stage, these lobes form the alveolar structures, and in end stage, you can see lactating unites in the end piece of the lactiferous ducts and terminal ducts. These structures in the inner side of lobe form the lobules. Lobules appear in the lobe part. All of these lobules connected with the lactiferous ducts, and these lactiferous ducts directly connect with the lactiferous sinuses. Here you can see the lobes. Lobes separated from each other with irregular dense connective tissue. But in the inner side of the lobes and in the inner side of the lobules, generally inner side of lobules, you can see loose connective tissue instead of dense connective tissue. Look at here. You can read this part for yourself. The lobules, also known as the terminal duct lobular unit. This part is our terminal duct lobular unit, appearing the end pieces. And in the last stage, you can see alveolar secretory unit in the end of the ducts. Guys, these ducts is our intralobular ducts in the intralobular side, and this part is our normal lactiferous ducts. Okay, this is our histologic section from the breast during the pregnancy, before the pregnancy. Here we have a section from mammary gland before pregnancy. This structures is our lobules or lobes, from lobes. Lobules not formed in this stage. This structure is lobes. And as you can see, these lobes separated from the other lobes with these thick structures. This area is our connective tissue. This connective tissue is regular dense connective tissue, separate the lobes from each other. This is a lobe, this is another lobe. And in the inner side, you can see the lactiferous ducts goes to form. Here, you can see glands is going to activate during the pregnancy. As you can see, the lobes increase the size, and another lobe present here, and between the lobe you can see the connective tissue, irregular dense connective tissue, and in the inner side of the lobes you can see loose connective tissue, and this structure is our alveolar structure. Here you can see the lactation stage. In lactation stage, in all parts of the mammary gland, we have the alveolar system, and you can see low amount of dense connective tissue between the lobes, because that lobes increase the size and fill all the structure of the mammary gland, and the connective tissue decrease the size.